It's really a pleasure to be here, and it's so much of an honor to be invited to be at this event. I know Katharsis has been such an important part of the Red Doors offerings, and so it's great to be speaking. So I'll just jump into this presentation today with starting with this short video.
Some said children were out of the question. Well, here I am, a mother of 2 boys. Some said I couldn't handle business life. Well, I've interviewed over 100 CEOs and counting. Some said I wouldn't be able to write a book on mental health. Well, here it is, available wherever books are sold. I'm Aparna Piramal Raje, and I'm happy, thriving, and bipolar. I'm here to say that you can live with a mental health condition, even something as serious as bipolar disorder, which takes you very high and very low, and learn to thrive with it. Read Chemical Khichdi and find out how I hacked my mental health, and perhaps how you or someone you know can also hack your mental health. Join me in a conversation on a subject that affects all of us.
So I'm sure everyone in this room knows what bipolarity is about, but just for the sake of it, I'd like to share a few pictures. So this is me actually 4.5 years ago when I was quite manic. I was actually on holiday with my family. And you can see, if you look closely at the picture and look at my eyes and look at my face, how much I'm just struggling to smile, and my smile is not as natural as my sister who's next to me. And I haven't slept for days. There's so many thoughts in my head. I can't control them. I have so many emotions, and it's just really difficult to keep it all together. And what I think you can also see is the impact that my sister has on me as my ally, and how close she and I are, and how important allies are in that journey that all of us might have experienced. So this was really the whole phase of being manic. I first started having these manic episodes over 20 years ago. I started in my 20s, just before I went to Harvard Business School. And over a span of about 20 years, I had about a dozen of them. It could have been every 6 months, every 2 years, every 4 years. So the frequency would vary, but the pattern was pretty similar, that I would go for days and nights without sleeping properly, have too much energy, too much restlessness, too many ideas. There were times when I was psychotic, there'd be hallucinations or delusions in my head, and I literally couldn't look after myself. So that was the sort of manic phase, and it was always psychological triggers that caused the chemical imbalances. And it was really this pattern that has been going on in my life. For the last 4.5 years, though, I've been in a really good place, nothing has happened. That, of course, doesn't mean that it can't happen again in the future. You know, when all these chronic mental health conditions, we really have to be careful, and things can always happen. And I do need to continue to hack my health on a daily basis, because there are those ups and downs. And I tend to feel emotions more intensely than others. This is a picture of depression, and I think for me this is an interesting picture of depression, because it just shows that, you know, in our lives you can be depressed and still function, right? There's still kids in my life, I still have responsibilities, I'm a mother, but you're not functioning to your full potential. And that's what's so deceptive about depression, that you can have a job, you can go to school, you can take your exams, you can go to college, you can do all these things, and you can still be depressed. It's not that perception that we're all sitting at home in our pajamas and crying, right? That's not what depression looks like. So I wanted to share these pictures. And then this is what I would consider to be my normal personality. This is me with my yellow sunglasses and a big smile 20 years ago, just before I went off to business school, and always like to distinguish between, you know, personality and illness. So that was me, and this is a more recent picture of me with my posing for my book launch and just waiting for some fashion magazine to come and feature me. So this would be a picture of that. So essentially what was going on was, you know, I had all these manic episodes, and about 4 years ago, I was losing anywhere from 2 to 3 months in a year because of my mental illness. So I was either manic, I was depressed, I was not able to work the way I was working now. And today I'm in a situation where I've written Chemical Khichdi, my column in the Mint has crossed 100 editions. I teach undergraduates and postgraduates at a university in Ahmedabad, and I'm raising a family. So all of these things have happened. So there has been a recovery, and I hope it obviously is here to stay. But I wanted to ask you first, we can keep it interactive because we're in an intimate space. Anybody want to guess how does one recover from a mental illness? What do you think? Anyone? Yeah.
By doing what you like best and be in your comfort zone basically, and devoting time with yourself. So that is what is most important.
Okay, that's a good answer. Yes, doing what's most important. Yeah,
Not shying away from asking for help.
asking for help.
As much help as you can.
Yeah, I sense you read Chemical Khichdi, Avni. Yes.
I think it's acceptance and compassion. These two are the most important ingredients, and of course, other things follow later.
Yeah, accept.
Acceptance that yes, this is what I have, and not to judge self on those things, but to be compassionate that okay, I need to do something about it.
Yeah. So these are all great answers, and it's great to hear this because it's obviously an audience that is very evolved. Because mostly when I ask those questions, people just say go to a therapist, and of course, going to a therapist or going to a counselor is part of the problem, part of the solution. But there are other alternatives too. So when I look at this, what I really want to talk about today is how being unwell helped me to live to my potential. So I just gave an example of how being unwell stopped me from living to my full potential. But why do I say that being unwell actually helped me to live to my full potential? So I think when you need to win at something, you need to have some defeats. So what are these defeats? What did I need to defeat? So the first thing, as a gentleman over here said, is defeating denial. I think when it comes to mental health, we are all in denial, and it's much safer and easier to be in denial for a long time because we don't want the labels, right? I didn't want the label of bipolarity. For 13 years, I resisted that label. And it was always like, is she a borderline case? Should she take medication? Should she not take medication? What should happen? What will happen if she wants to have a family where she's taking lithium? All these kind of questions. So there was a real sense of not wanting to really take on that label until finally a psychiatrist wrote in a letter to me, she has a normal personality, but she has a chemical imbalance which needs treating. So I think finally I was able to accept that difference between personality and illness, because it's so easy for us to say, oh, so and so has got a disorder, oh, that means that they're moody, or they don't communicate, they don't like being with people, they're grumpy, like they're all different labels that we can attach to those people on their behavior without really understanding what the reasons are. But once in my head I could reframe the difference between personality and illness, it made life a lot easier. And over time, as I'll talk about at the end of the presentation, living with that vulnerability is about accepting that difference and somewhere actually coming to love both of them, the personality and the illness. So it's really about both of these. Now, the second one, as Avni was saying here in the front, defeating isolation. I think that, especially when we're suffering from things like depression, we just want to cut off from connection. We don't want connection. We want to be isolated. We want to be in our little cocoons. But one thing I realized quite early on, actually, is I asked for help. And I really felt that that is going to change my life. And I had lots of one-on-one conversations with people in my circle. So my friends, my mentors, my networks, my colleagues, my family members, one-on-one conversations with them. And in Chemical Khichdi, I featured 60 of these people. All those conversations are there because I said they are part of the ecosystem, because I really believe that mental health is a team sport. It is not like COVID, where, you can put somebody into a room and leave them there for 5 days or 7 days or whatever it is, give them food 4 times a day and they'll be okay and they'll come back and everyone's fine. That's not what it is. There's no isolation there. It's a team sport, right? I'll give a couple of examples of my people on my team. So these are some of what I call the daily download friends. So I really believe that you don't need 2 a.m. friends, okay? Anybody can be your 2 a.m. friend, because if your house is burning and you call somebody at 2 a.m., they will help you. They'll be pretty nasty not to help you. But the people you need in your life are your daily download friends. The people who are checking from you, I haven't heard from you in 2 days, what's going on? Oh, you're doing so many talks, how's it going? Oh, what's happened to your kid? Is your kid been sick? So who are in sync with you. It's not like, oh, we haven't been in touch for so many months or so many days. They're actually in sync with you on a daily basis, even maybe not daily, but 2-3 days. They actually know what's going on with your life. They are my emotional barometer. They are the reason why I can share my emotions and share my thoughts and really talk to them and confide in them. So I think the daily download friends are really important. And the other group that has really helped me, apart from my family, of course, has been a huge part of my journey, and they've been really essential. But my book club, we started off, I've had this book club for 10 years. We call ourselves the Bombay Feminist Book Club. And I said that when I was first diagnosed, I wrote a note about 10 things I've learned about being bipolar. And that's the space in which I discussed this note. And I said, what should I do with this? And they said, well, write a book about it. And they could understand it as a form of writing and as a art form, as an expression, and they could encourage that, So I just think having these spaces, we all call them safe spaces, but what does a safe space look like? Well, the safe space looks like this, right? People who can give you encouragement, who can give you constructive criticism and feedback, who can help you on this journey, because it's honestly taken me like 7 years from start to finish of wanting to write this book and then actually writing it. It's really been a long journey, and these people have been a big part of that. So the third defeat is defeating disruption. Okay, now I think anybody who has been manic will also know that there are times when it can be quite traumatic, but the problem is it can be a lot of fun. Okay, it can be very addictive. And you think you're the center of the universe and you're going to change the world and you think you're special and the whole world is just out there to give you this amazing crown and you're going to change everything about life and you're busy coming up with these amazing ideas. I was talking with one young doctor who called me and he was recently diagnosed and he said, in mania I think I'm really special. Am I that special? I said, I have to tell you that you are special, but probably not as special as you think you are, And the challenge really is that when you are in this state, it's just an enjoyable place to be, right? And you are enjoying it. It's very difficult for everyone. It's a lot of disruption. But so how does one then say, I'm going to find ordinary life satisfying and fulfilling? I'm going to find those rituals of ordinary life very, very satisfying. It's a real change. I had to actually tell myself, happiness is not in the highs. Happiness is not in the highs, and so I had to say, well, what is it then? So you find joy in different ways, right? I find joy in sitting in my swing, wearing my hot kimono, even on a hot day and listening to music for 2 hours and getting a headache after that, but I love it, or playing table tennis with my son and we're so competitive and every time he loses a point, he's got this shy smile on his face and, that's the only time you can get to see a teenager smile. So it's, you basically look for joy in different ways, having dinner time with my children, and all the discussing the day with them, and of course holidays and all those things are fun, but the daily joys, right, the things that you do on a daily basis, the writing, the creating, and that's been a real journey, right, to take pleasure and comfort and joy from this healing rituals rather than from fantasy, and I think that if anybody really wants to especially for bipolar, but maybe for other conditions also, if you really want to recover from them, you have to let go of that feeling of wanting to be in that state, which is a tough one to let go of. So yeah, that's me on my swing. And that's exercise, again, really important. That's even the lockdown, just making sure I worked out. Always enjoy that post-endorphin workout feeling that we get. And then the other one is about defeating pessimism through gratitude and grit. I think that when we get a diagnosis of a chronic mental health condition, whether it's bipolar, anxiety, schizophrenia, whatever you're dealing with, an eating disorder, and it's supposed to be like a chronic thing that you can't deal with, so easy to be pessimistic about it, right? But gratitude is the one thing that really changes your life, right? I think we all know about gratitude journals, but for me, the way I look at it is that when I'm in that black hole, gratitude is that ladder that gets me onto the first rung to get out of that black hole. It may not change everything for me, but it makes my mind more receptive to the positive outcomes and the positive stories that come out of it, So I think gratitude is really important part. And I think that we just remind ourselves just how much we have to be thankful for, no matter what we're going through, is something that puts us in a really positive space. And combine that with grit and say that this is not the life I want. I don't, even though I have a mental health condition, or I'm looking after with someone with a mental health condition, I think that you want a life which is more fulfilling. You want to live the dreams that you've always had. Nothing should stop you from doing that. So that grit piece is also really, really important. And a big part of the grit for me was reconfiguring my life, okay? So, I was brought up for like the first 30 odd years of my life to think that the only thing to do in life was to be an entrepreneur, to be in business, to have a family business, because that was the kind of family I was exposed to, and the people around me were also, especially being brought up in a place like Mumbai, a lot of people were business people, right? And then I actually reached a stage where I failed at that, and my family had to say, you have to leave the business, and this is after having gone to Harvard and done an MBA and seen all my colleagues like really have successful careers. And here I am saying, I need to kind of now reconfigure my life completely. I'm a mother of two. I want to work from home. I don't have much of a career, even in writing. And I want to, and I have to deal with a mental health condition. And I have failed at doing the one thing that I thought I would be doing for the rest of my life. So I really had that grit to say, let me reinvent myself. Okay, and over a period of time, I tried so many things that didn't work out, but it just kept doing them. And today I have this, what I call the portfolio life of teaching, writing, speaking, and giving, of course, involves a lot of getting back for me. And I think it's something that's given me a huge amount of purpose. And has really reshaped my whole identity. So I think having the grit to just keep up with that and just pursue, so that has been really important. And the last one is really the most important one. I think that some people refer to this already, is defeating self-doubt through self-inquiry and self-reflection. So I think that we all have, so much self-doubt in our lives. And self-doubt was really what was propelling me to go the way I was. So I'll share a story. I was 37, and I'd been diagnosed with bipolar some time back. And I was suffering from depression. And one day I literally stood, got up from my room, and the feeling was just too much for me to bear. And I went onto my terrace, and I really looked there, and I said, what will happen if I jump off right now? Is it high enough for me to do what I want to do, or am I just going to end up in a wheelchair for the rest of my life? And what was wrong in my life, right? I'd gone to Oxford, I'd gone to Harvard, I was from a family business, I had two beautiful children, I had a family and a husband who really cared for me. And why was I even thinking that? The simple reason is I was not feeling good enough. No matter what we do, we don't feel good enough so often. We feel we're not attractive enough, we're not rich enough, we're not talented enough, we're not thin enough, we're not funny enough, we're not this or that or another. It's such a strong feeling in us that I used to go to my business school reunions and I used to feel, my God, my colleagues are just earning so well and they've got these amazing jobs and they're being these really global people, and what am I doing with myself? And there was constant comparison. That comparison just is like, as somebody said, the thief of joy, and it's really a huge amount of self-doubt that it leads to. So I really started through a process of self-inquiry and self-reflection, which has led me to where I am. I started writing journals about 10 years ago. I wish I'd started earlier. And I was really having a conversation with myself to understand why these psychological triggers are happening. Not to just say that, okay, I have a condition and I have to deal with it, but I knew that there were triggers that were causing imbalances. So what were the triggers? And obviously I did have a therapist, so it helped to, provided some input, but I did a lot of this thinking myself. And I'll share an example. So when we sold one of our family businesses, the one that I was running, I wrote 10 years ago, I need to still find a way of turning my intellectual interests, writing, film, design, into something that's of value and will also fulfill my needs of winning peer respect. This is exciting because there are several options and the road is open, as well as terrifying because of the uncertainty. And I think I was pretty honest over here. I was honest about that I needed peer validation. I was honest about how exciting and terrifying it was. And all of these different, these were the kind of entries that were there in my book where I really, really had this conversation with myself. Some people have been kind enough to say that Chemical Khichdi is very personal and very authentic, but that's because I've been having this conversation for 10 years with myself. You know, I didn't ever think that I'd be publishing my journal, but then it was the best way of, you know, sharing my thoughts with the reader, which is why I did that. But people say that you need to be kind to yourself, and I think it's very important for us to be kinder to ourselves. But I think it's also important for us to be a little bit rigorous with ourselves also, and to understand our motivations and to really understand what is really important, right? So these ideas of success, happiness, dharma, purpose, meaning, fulfillment, these are all ideas that I questioned over and over and over and over and over and over again until I came to a place today where I think I'm much happier with it, you know. And if the only reason I feel more confident saying that I think there'll be fewer manic episodes for me, hopefully none in the future, is because I think I'm in that place where I'm a lot happier about doing what I love, as you said, and doing things that really make me feel fulfilled. And don't lead to triggers. The other thing I wanted to say was, you know, I've studied the Vedant for some time now, and also I've not read the Bhagavad Gita cover to cover, but I've had some shloks that have really explained my life. If you read Chemical Khichdi, you'll see the impact spiritual therapy has had on me. I know we have a panel about that just now, so I don't want to get too much more into it. But that's been a really, really big part of my journey, especially in dealing with relationships and understanding how not to have too many expectations from relationships. So these were the 5 defeats: defeating isolation by asking for help, defeating denial through self-acceptance, defeating disruption through rituals, defeating self-doubt through self-reflection and self-inquiry, and defeating pessimism through gratitude and grit. So this is what has been the way that I have kind of been through this journey of recovery. But the question is, what have I gained? So there have been some defeats, but what have I gained? And I think the biggest thing is these factors, all of them. So I've really understood that happiness is success. Success is not happiness. Because success, when you keep chasing, will never be enough. You know, you'll get married today, then somebody will tell you, okay, now you have to produce kids. Now then you have to get them into a good school. Then you have to get them to pass their board exams. Then they have to go to college and get to a top college, and then they have to get to. So your job as a parent never ends, right? Because you're constantly setting these milestones. Or if you're working for a company, then you have to constantly get promoted every year or 2 years or 3 years, whatever it. You have to buy a house. You have to do this. You have to do that. So the success is a never-ending kind of target. It's just such a moving target, which doesn't mean that I'm not driven. Like, I'm very driven. I think that in this 1 week itself, I'm doing some 12 talks on Mental Health Day for various organizations, you know, and I really, really am very motivated by the idea of trying to make a difference in this space. But I'm not looking after every talk to see how many Instagram followers did I get, or, you know, how many people connected with me on LinkedIn, or how many books did I sell. Yes, you look at that, but that's not what the happiness is not coming from that. The happiness is coming from just genuinely interacting with people, right? So understanding that between happiness and success, which one comes first in the equation? And turning that equation on its head is such a big achievement in itself, actually. Purpose and identity, I've spoken about a little bit about how I shifted my identity from saying my identity is was of a business person, from a Gen Next kind of inheritor kind of identity, to saying my identity really is my purpose. What I do, you know, through writing, through teaching, through speaking, is the way for me to have an impact, for me to channel my intellect, channel my creativity, and that is really my identity. Detachment has been such a big learning, and we can have a whole session on really attachment, detachment, spirituality, Vedant, but how, you know, because interpersonal relationships cause so much emotional and triggers for many of us, right, at all ages of our life. So that's a whole separate conversation on how to get there. And who knows what COO stands for? Anyone? Okay, so COO technically stands for Chief Operating Officer of a company, like it's a type of position within a company. But as I say it, it stands for Child of Owner, okay? And if you are from that background where you are the child of the owner of the business, you get treated differently no matter who you are. And so I think bipolarity has really taught me a lot of humility, because it's about accepting your flaws and vulnerabilities and reworking yourself and letting go of these identities that were thrust on you. And finally, gratitude, I already talked about a lot. So lastly, what I would just say is, a friend of mine said this, is that you allowed bipolarity to teach you what it needed to teach you. It became your guru, a roadmap for enlightenment. She's an old friend of mine. And I think the point I would like to say about this statement is that first is that it is the guru. Your vulnerability can actually become your guru. And the second thing is you have to allow it to become your guru. You have to be willing to learn from it. Both of these things. So when you talk about serving the guru, then you serve it with what you've learned from it. Yeah, that's the way I look at it. And maybe we'll have a chance. I think we're not having questions right now, but maybe I'll be around until the end of the day. So if you want to have a chat, I'd be very happy to do that. Thank you.